Hello, hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Witching Half Hour or so. I have a very special guest with me today. I'm excited because, like me, she is an elder witch, so she comes to you with a lot of experience, like real practical world experience. So the wisdom that's going to be dropping today is just going to be like you're having tea with your favorite people, spilling wisdom. This is Jeannine Kim. Now, like I said, she's an elder witch. She has over 24 years working as a mystic. She's an intuitive healer. She does 5D astrology, which we're going to talk about because I'm so excited about that. She's a holistic health practitioner. She brings yoga. She supports her clients with working through their trauma, really tuning into their body, listening to them, and looking at it from a holistic approach. Hi, Jeannine. Did I miss anything?
No, Mama, that was a lot. I know it's, when you go down the rabbit holes, you just can't stop. So I went down many, but you did it. And I'm here. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have you. So one of the things that's really neat about your journey, and I love learning how people came to this crooked path that we're on, you started in IPO.
Yes.
So how is that? How do you go from that disconnected world to this very holistic, trauma-informed world?
Such a good question. We have to rewind back to last century a little bit. Probably like you as well. I was born this way, right? And in the late 60s, early 70s, even beyond that, like how does this type of way of being, even now, how does that get reflected back as a child? It just kind of doesn't, right? Whenever I would try to bring it up, or if I had a dream, this is kind of really how I remember my earliest memory. I was like 5 years old, maybe 6, and going somewhere with my mother. I was telling her about this dream that I had the night before of the place we were going. And back in the day, there was no GPS. So she's, frantically looking through the map and her papers, and we get there, and it's the whole place I had described to her. And she just sat there frozen, like, and I perceived that as being negative, like, scared mom, not good. And so I tried another route and still not good.
Right.
So that was my perception, 5 or 6 years old, and we wanna please mom. So I just tucked it away. And that was just the beginning. Like little bits kept coming, pushed it down. And then I had to move out pretty young because it was a tricky childhood. And so I moved out at 17, almost 18.
I'm just going to say that seems really young now, but it wasn't then.
Right.
Like a lot of people moved out right out of high school. The cost of living was different. The way we worked was different. I left home at 17, came back, left again at 19,
Right. It was such a different time. And that is so important because it was just kind of like what people did. Graduate high school, go and find my own way, pay my own way. In that, I landed in the financial industry because I'm really good with numbers. I stayed there for about 10 years. But during that time, all this caught up. My trauma caught up, being a sensitive caught up, and my curiosities. So during the 90s, I was, for health reasons and then otherwise, devouring as much spiritualism that we call it as I can. I read Shirley MacLaine, every book she has to offer. I did Eckhart Tolle. I did, well, he didn't come out a little bit later, but I did Seed of the Soul, Gary Zukav.
I read that. That's such a great book.
You're like, right? He was one of my first, and Norman Vincent Peale was my very first book in the early 90s that really got me thinking about the power of intention and how there's kind of more, because I'm very Catholic upbringing, Chicago, Southside Chicago, that type of thing. So all of this was brewing, and Prevention Magazine led me to holistic ways of eating and being with my body that served me best. And then I started my yoga practice then.
Okay.
Very intentionally in the early 90s with Allie McGraw. She had a video with Eric Schiffman.
Mhm.
I bought the VHS when it first came out. I remember seeing it on the wall in Chicago. He later became my teacher in the early 2000s that I have my certification from.
Beautiful. I love hearing this for many reasons. I think for those of the Earbud Coven who have been on this path for a while, like you and me, we're all going to be feeling nostalgic. We're going to be knowing and recognizing these books. And for our younger Earbud Coven members, for them to understand that it was difficult to find this information. I know my listeners feel like they're left of center and they're square pegs that don't fit into round holes. And it's always kind of been like that. Even with all the technology they have, that feeling of searching is universal. That feeling of like, I don't quite fit in here, and discovering a new way of thinking and a different narrative than what's taught to us in our culture. I love it.
You're saying all this, and I'm getting completely activated and just hearing all these things where, and I know you know this, it's still very much, but especially for us, it was the experience first type of a path. And it was not an intellectual journey. It was not, as much as I adore and love the education that is online and the findings that are there, that to me is still a little bit more mind driven versus the experience, right? Although it's all perfect.
Yeah.
Hers was very much like, and you and I couldn't sit here and have this like, oh my God, thank God there's somebody like you, Jody Ann, out there. We couldn't have that kind of realization, right? Because when you were in your hood, you were in your hood. Like,
exactly. There was only one metaphysical bookshop.
Right, right.
Yeah, so our path was dictated by what was available, right? What books they would stock, usually whatever pantheon or path the book owner was on. So if they were Wiccan, there was a bunch of Wiccan books. And if they were a Dianic reclaiming witch, it would all be political zines. It was very specific.
It really was. And so there was a lot of mysticalness around our path, right? It is always that seeking that you really have to want it that way, I feel, in order for it to blossom. Like if it was too easy, then we wouldn't get to the crux of these breakthroughs that we do and want them so wholeheartedly. And then even in our own breakthroughs, that is the very medicine by way of frequency that we bring to the people around us that sets them free, right? So you have to want it that much. This path of being psychic, it's an invitation to living our greatest truth.
Oh, sister, goose.
Right?
I told you guys there would be wisdom dropping effortlessly.
You have to want it. Truth is not easy, but it is the best in the long run, when we trust our truth. So yeah, it started to ooze out of my pores, and I became an IPO trader. I was Series 7, Series 63 licensed all through the 90s. Was in that gilded cage, made the funds, moved to California with my ex-husband, worked in La Jolla, and with one of the top brokers in the nation at Solomon Smith Barney at the time, helped build that practice in La Jolla. And I started to go to school at night for massage therapy. I heard going to be a healer. I'm like, 99. What is that? A healer. I then just sought out all the things I loved. My yoga practice was strong. I had to get massage for my body. California was heaven because they actually had organic foods. There was like one Whole Foods in Chicago. When I was, in the 90s, they didn't know what that was. And I pierced my nose, got a tattoo on my foot, got rid of all my clothes, and never looked back. See, back in the day too, in the early 2000s, you couldn't work with piercings or tattoos.
No, you couldn't work with piercings or tattoos. All my tattoos are still coverable.
I really made it so I couldn't go back, and I just went straight into healing, and I never looked back. And I had fabulous support systems along the way.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah.
much. So you had a whole point of your life where you were what I would call living in the broom closet, doing your trading, like, and big, powerful trading.
Yeah. By day. Hmm.
And so just for a minute, tell me a little bit about that. Like, what was it like to have 2 feet, or sorry, 1 foot in one world and 1 foot in another world? What did that do for you inside?
It was extremely polarizing. But yet, and what I always love to say about law of attraction is that law of attraction isn't so much a mindset. I have a little issue around law of attraction, but it's not so much of
Me
okay,
too.
mama, you know where I'm going. It's not so much of a mindset as it is a default. Like it just is. So my being in that financial world in the 90s, it was very much like the Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, I have stories upon stories, but it mirrored my upbringing. And I was able to handle it beautifully because it was harsh and I had a lot of that verbal stuff growing up. And so I had this ability to survive. But as it happens, when we start formulating on the inside and get deeper into our truth, we can no longer tolerate those things. I call it no longer tolerating. And little by little, it's like, heck no, this, no, no, no. Mm-mm. And it became so much so that I was just, it was a false me that was living there at the end. But I had to make that choice, and I was like, that's it. I'm done. And I signed up for tickets to go learn in China. And I was going to school at night, Reiki trained. And it was, I couldn't contain my greater truth anymore.
And that's why I asked you that question. When you said that you sold it all and you didn't even care, I'm like, oh, there is a moment in there where you come to the place in your soul where it doesn't matter what anyone else says. You are going to walk your path, whatever that is. Sometimes it means it's a very 180 from where you are. And sometimes it's a more osmotic kind of flow into something. But we all have those moments where we go, what I'm living isn't serving me. This is not aligning with my truth anymore. And there takes so much courage, even though we know what's right, it still takes so much courage to do it.
And we have to remember, and this is so important, that courage is not as courageous as it seems when you're in it. Like you imagine it feels like, well, this is me. Let me just, I imagine it's all like Mel Gibson and Braveheart and all gutsy and stuff like this. And it may appear that way on the outside, but typically courage is doing something in the face of that fear, but really based on a passion that you have. And it was getting to the point where I could not wake up every day. It was too heavy to put on that old identity. It was like an outfit that was like, it was suffocating. It was an identity that was done. So I had to trust what I was blossoming into. I didn't have to, but I could no longer tolerate what was happening anymore. And the universe is like, you done yet? Are you done?
No, I know that. You can almost see your guide sitting there going, okay, baby, anytime you're ready, like we're going to help you transition through this.
You know. And I have to say, okay, so I'm just going to go straight to
Yeah.
this fun part because you perfect lead, and I think this is what it is. It was very much, I felt it coming. I knew the change was coming. And so this was February. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I am going to buy my tickets to go to China, which I did for October, and go study there. It was September, October. I was gone for a couple months. I'm going to go study. Gives me like 6 months to leave the business, okay, to exit out, save some extra cash, do what I got to do. And so I bought the tickets and I couldn't return them. So that was my commitment factor. A couple weeks later, after we had this massive party in Palm Desert, I walk in on a Friday, my computer would not turn on. And I looked at my boss. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, go talk to the head person. I'm like, So I go in there and they're like, we can't have you anymore. You're done. And because it was naughty how they did it, there was no reason to let me go. They gave me a chunk of change, paid my insurance for over a year. And then of course my assistant is the one who did my job with half the salary. And so that was the impetus for leaving. And yet a couple weeks later, now I could leave, finish my studies, which I crammed it all in. I did an intensive format and I got paid for a year, insurance wise. I got a big chunk of change because I trusted. And that was 2 to 3 weeks after I bought my tickets and said, I'm doing it regardless. And then the safety
I
net
love
came.
that.
We gotta leap. It's a full card, right?
So I love tarot. I know you read tarot, but what I really want to just clumsily segue into, tell me about 5D astrology. This, I've been thinking about this and thinking about this because that's not my strong suit. And I do use astrology. I have a very surface understanding. Tell me about 5D astrology. I gotta know. I gotta know.
So what I love about 5D astrology, when I started this, I was working with Stephanie Azaria. Look her up. She's one of the greatest. She brought this forward decades ago. It was channeled through Elizabeth Clare Prophet, who received it from the House of Mary. And it was touching in on planets that now people are actually talking about. But when I studied with Stephanie in 2010 and then went on into the teens, and she had it before that, it was really capturing the planets that are outside of our basic solar system, our basic Venus, Mars, Mercury, those little buggers. So this is inviting in a greater consciousness. And so what that does for starters, it's, when you have something in the astrology, whether it's traditional planets or these 5D structures, they are reflecting a level of your consciousness. And that's even what happens when they're found. Like they name it, they give it the archetype based on what was going on in the ether at the time. So when we get the 5D, it's a reflection of this higher capacity that we have as individuals that kind of interjects into our soul, that when we talk about it, it's because we're capable of it. So it helps to balance the trauma. And also 5D works in a different way. When they look at it at cosmic clock. So instead of going backwards, it goes forward. And so it kind of winds us up and out of our karma and a little bit more free of the weight of that gravity. I know that's a lot and that's kind of deep, but it's these planets, I love working with them. I know you and I had a fun conversation about some of them.
Yes. So what are they? Which ones are they so that we can start Googling? Do you have stuff on your website around 5D astrology for newcomers and for the Earbud Coven to dive into?
I do. I don't have a storehouse of information. I do have one-on-one sessions, love to share. And I do have some of that astrology, the 5D astrology in my tribe, which is a paywall that they receive a bunch of information in. So it's there nestled in as well.
And so we'll have all your links. Your links will be in the description and big links in the show notes, everyone. So you can follow all this and get the information. But in a little nutshell, what are these planets?
Thank you. Okay, so the 5D planetary structures, and because they're becoming so widely used these days, they're trans-Neptunian objects, they're centaurs, they're fixed stars. The points that I use may be different than somebody else's, is what I'm trying to say. But the ones that I've used throughout the years are Pallas Athena, or also known as Minerva. Remember her name in Harry Potter?
Yes.
Pallas Athena, she's that fair goddess. The goddess Salacia, Setna, Ophiuchus. That could even be another constellation. Some of us are feeling Chiron. Now, believe it or not, like that one is spoken of a lot, but he's 3D, 5D. He's known as the Rainbow Bridge because his cycle goes between Uranus and Saturn. And Saturn is Chronos, father of time. Uranus kind of takes us beyond time, kind of very 5D. Aquarius, Uranus is a bit. So, and Chiron circles around that.
Oh,
So he's known as the Rainbow Bridge. Some astrology cultures don't even use Chiron because he's so new, but Chiron is fabulous centaur in so many ways. Then Chariklo is his wife, midwife. She's a transformational midwife. She's fantastic. Let me see. Goddess Haumea. I use Goddess Haumea. Goddess Ceres, and the goddess Ceres is the goddess of the harvest. We think cereal. She's the mother of Persephone. And so these are just some of them. These are some of the main ones that I use in my chart when I do astrological readings. And so, Vesta, the Vestal Virgins. And so that shows where we're really devoted to something where we may lose ourselves. But it's something that, in 5D energy, it's a frequency where we've kind of worked through all the depths of stuff and we've earned this higher frequency. And so, by way of placement, where it comes alive best in our life. For instance, my Vesta, the goddesses of the fire, the flame in Olympus, in Olympus, the Roman time, my devotion is around my children and those that I love. It's in my fifth house. And sometimes I can lose myself to that. She's a great reminder, but I am so devoted and it's right along with my Neptune. So I'm highly spiritual and all of those are in Scorpios and it's my South Node. So I'm highly just devoted to the spiritual path, my children, and those that I love.
I can see how those of us who are on that evolution path of like turning our soul from lead into gold would really resonate with this. What I'm hearing you say are all these different layers and the very high vibration. I can feel it when you're talking about it. Because when we work with our own natal chart and then to take it to, I can almost see the threads as you're talking, like through ancestral and through Akashic connection.
I use the Ceres point as well. So you could see where the Ceres star is. It's the brightest star in the sky, and it's the star that houses the ascended masters. And so these are such important places, I feel, to support this journey because the climate now is to be able to embody this frequency. In order to embody it, it's wonderful when we could consciously work with that and say, yeah, that is us too. Not as in a form of escapism, which sometimes I know spirituality can be that way, but in a space of grounding. Because there's a saying that I love to say all the time. It's going to be in my new book. Being human is the most spiritual thing we can do. And when we take this humanness and allow these high vibes to really permeate and penetrate, which we can now, the frequency's different, not like back past lives where, wasn't allowed. Then that's how the meek shall inherit the earth. That's how we really become so deep in our spiritual path.
I love how you talk about that embodiment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The fact that we're here as a human being in this incarnation for a reason.
Yes.
We incarnated as a human.
Yeah.
Our humanity and this very mundane world is a huge part of our growth, staying embodied and not going to that place of spiritual bypassing.
No, goosebumps. Mm-hmm. I'm with you there completely. Yeah.
Love it.
So important.
I love that Sedna's up there. I have a very, very, very soft-hearted spot for Sedna. And you and I have talked about this because I spend a lot of time in the North Pacific Ocean. So you're in this beautiful, warm area where I'm up here in Canada in a very cold water area.
The old ocean. I found shells the first time I was here. I'm not kidding. When we first moved here, I was walking, feeling, oh my gosh, I miss the ocean. I was up on a mountain. I was hiking in this land in Lamy, little away from Santa Fe. And I found this massive rock that had tons of shells on there. They used to be ocean here.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Ancient, right? Crazy, right?
That must be an amazing vibration.
Oh, yeah. And this is volcanic land, and all the different types of volcanoes that there are in the world, separate, they all live here. So the land in New Mexico is very sacred.
I have got to get down there one of these days. I got to some kind of a retreat or something.
That would be fantastic. I just got goosebumps everywhere. I would love that because you know what? And I know you know this. The practice is everything.
Yeah.
We could tell you a little bit, but you got to do it. You got to do it. And having people to hold the space for you so you could understand what it means to be psychic and how much truth it requires from you in alignment is is the way it comes to be, because the feminine is the experience,
And
right?
the experience of being in a group, like a lot of
Oh,
people,
yes.
they're solo
Mhm.
practitioners. And I do a lot of solo practitioner work, but
Yes.
I grew up as a baby witch in covens.
Oh my
And I've
gosh.
worked with many different groups over time. I've led circles where I've taught a group of women, and I'm in a mini coven with some of my little besties.
Oh,
When you work together with other practitioners, the energy you can hold,
I know. I know.
it's kind of like when you both lift a heavy piece of furniture together. It doesn't feel heavy when you have a bunch of people lifting a heavy bookshelf, but by yourself, it's a lot of work.
This is the truth. It's like the main question I opened up with our retreat was, and I love to ask my clients this when we're working on intuition and things like this. Why do you want to be psychic? Like, what do you think that will deliver you to
Mhm.
this like unicorn and utopian world? No, the way I love to say it is, I taught yoga years ago, and if I taught tons of different levels of people in one class. And so I had beginners, I had people who'd been there for a while. I'm like, if I walked around with my eyes closed and I heard the beginner moaning at their edge and the yogi, seasoned yogi moaning at their edge, there would be no difference in the sound because this is an eternal existence. And so we're always pushing an edge of growth. Doesn't matter if you've been doing this for however many years you and I have been doing it together, we are still growing. And that means we're still knowing and not knowing. And so, but the difference, of course, with that yogi that's been doing it a while looks for the edge
Mm.
and is like, oh, it still sucks big time, but this is right where I need to be. And maybe somebody who's new is like, okay, just let me touch my toes. It really hurts. And then I'll never have to do it again.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, because you can't sit that out next time you go to yoga class. You can't say, well, I touched my toes last time, so I don't have to do it now. No, it's about going further, right?
Like that. I had not thought of it that way, but that's very, very true.
Right? Like we're still growing.
Yeah.
We don't,
Well, and I realized too, one of the reasons I love teaching is because that is where I find my biggest edge and growth right now. I learned so much from the questions people are brave enough to ask me, and the self-examination and the diving in and the vulnerability that my students are willing to go to teaches me so much about myself, about people I love. It's it's one of the most beautiful things. Holding space for people has taught me so much.
I am right with you on that. I often say that if you want to be a healer on any capacity, I often feel like one of the first things that we should do and learn is to go sit with somebody who's passing, which is a big piece of the work that I've done in the past. I was death doula for like 5 years in San Diego, and I still do it now in different ways, but I'm, in the midst of raising my children. But I still hold space for them because when you sit there, you can't fix anything. You are just there to love them as open hearted as you can. And boy, oh boy, sometimes you're like, oh, that's too hard to look at. Can't, and wants all these things come up. But if you know how to just be so utterly present with everything that comes up in you and hold space for them without fixing, then you're ready to be healed. Right? That's like a big learn. It was for me.
No, I think that is for everyone because I've seen many people go into these healing paths to fix,
Yes,
to
thank you.
help,
Right,
to
right.
be the human doing and not the human being, right?
Can't heal anyone.
Because we can't fix anyone. We can hold space, we can hand over tools, we can talk things out.
Huge.
Our clients are healing. They are in charge of their healing. No matter, like I do ceremonial work for people. I'm like a witch for hire. I'll
Oh, I
cast your
love that.
spells for you, your blessings for you. I'll
Yes,
do like energy work and deep stuff.
right.
But if you won't receive that work, it doesn't matter what I do. You must be ready and open to receive the work. It's like being a horse to water.
Can't make them drink it.
No.
And would you say that even that being open to the work would mean continue the curiosity of what it means to really merge with these blessings that you bring them? And the way I see this, the visual I get is that, you could have somebody come and clean your house, the spring cleaning, the one behind the fridge and the floorboards, the real good one. But when they leave, that's not going to stay. It's like you got to keep up the work because it's going to happen again. Receiving it also means integration. Like integration is the greatest work that we can do.
I always have homework. There's specific
Yes, I did the homework too.
and it is all about integration, right?
Yes.
Especially when we're diving into doing work on like our inner teenager, that inner anger we hold,
Oh gosh.
which I find comes up a lot after people have dived into their inner child.
Oh
You
gosh.
got to deal with what you created to protect that inner child.
Absolutely.
That's often your inner teenager. And I love them. They're lovely. They have a lot of passion. When we're integrating and we're dealing with a lot of that stuff, the client has to be willing to take the responsibility to care for it. It's kind of like if you imagine you go and get stitches in a hospital, you need to change your dressing appropriately. You need to continue with your home care or you won't have a great heal.
Period. Mic drop. Got nothing to say there. That is the work. And I love that we're having these spiritual conversations now, but there's no end game per se. There's no like, okay, somebody just fixed me. I'm fine now because there's a soul pathology. Yes. What to call it, soul pathology that says, okay, are you willing to be with this? I mean, you could walk in that room and bring it for them, and I could walk in that room and bring it for them. But what are they going to do about the neural pathways, the habitual ways, the people, places, and things in their life that we just altered for them? Are they going to keep them there? Or is it, like, what are they going to do with that gift? And I love the dressing. Like, I love the visual of you got stitches, you got to go take care of that now. Right.
Even with smaller work, I find that as well. When we're doing, because I run a circle now, it's a new moon circle.
Love it.
We're manifesting and we talk about that. Like, this isn't an immediate click, it's going to happen. This is something that's going to build in the ether. It's going to accumulate and then it's going to come to you. So even with facilitating a circle that you're doing manifestation work, there is no drive-through fast food method to this work. Like we live in a very quick pro quo culture right now where everything is available. These traditional ways of being that I feel are much more in alignment with the human
experience and needs.
Yeah. They're not quick.
They're not quick. And gosh, we could go down so many paths because I feel like we're on such the same wavelength. I feel like the children that are being born now, it's the clarion call. It's the cry for us to align to them, not necessarily have them align to us. And so this call is like, yes, please come, rise and create a world that suits my rhythm. And because this one just isn't working. Look out the window. And so here we have this chance to really get into our own, like what you said before, which I love, the earth, the wind, the fire, the water that's within us. And when we come home to ourselves and check in, I say your 4 bodies are your babies. Have you checked in with them daily? Have you made space for them? Have you included them? Or are you schlepping it around even though they don't want to go? Or are you packing it saying, okay, I know you're sad, but we'll get back to that later. And then you never get back to it. And so, being with that within ourselves and slowing down and having that pace and anchoring it in our world around us is what brings healing alignment. Like our body gets more into ease and releases dis-ease. We get more into channel mode because everything can come up. So then we could hear spirit more. And that takes time.
Oh, yeah.
And practice and consistency. right? I call it tuning the instrument. You can have the best music in the world, but if you're, like Eddie Van Halen and you got a guitar and you didn't tune it, that song isn't going to come through.
Not.
No, that little ukulele, he might be able to pull it off. I don't know. He's a god on that guitar, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, if it's not tuned, it can't happen.
And it takes practice.
Right. Yes. Practice. The practice is the teacher, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it does remind me a lot of yoga. Like there's a lot of principles of a daily practice in yoga that transfer to spirit work. The idea that your edge is different every day, your capacity is different every day, that it doesn't matter as long as you get there.
Right.
In the practice, you can learn such compassion
Right.
for where you are in the moment. And when you transfer that to your spiritual work as well, like some days I cannot do a ritual.
Right.
Some days all I can do is a ceremonial bath because I'm curled up in water, and that's okay. There's no judgment on that. That's just our capacity. It's this weird thing in our culture that we're fed where we have to continually expand all the time.
Right.
Like that every month you have to be further ahead. Every year you have to be further ahead. You have to and it's so disconnected.
Right.
The cyclic nature of this planet.
It is. Because guess what, everyone? And I know everybody knows this, but let's talk about it. Evolution happens with or without our doing.
Yeah.
Our minds are here, I believe, to help us let go of things and integrate things so then the natural evolution can happen. And it is, the body is like, hey, I'm not ready to stretch this far yet. And I love, this is why you can do what you do, because you're like, hey, I ain't doing that today. I'm going to go curl up and take care of that body. So again, you're going back inward, listening to this inner dialogue before that horizontal dialogue or vertical existence that you're in.
We could talk all day, my love.
I know.
So right now, just say out loud your website for everyone in the Earbud Coven and where it's best to follow you, whether it's Facebook or what social you like.
Okay, it's JeannineKim.com, JeannineKim.com. And I just ventured out of the cave about a year ago into Instagram. So I'm over there and I'm warming up. Forgive me. It's not my forte. But you can definitely find me on my website.
All right. My love. Oh, we're going to have to do this again. You will have links to Jeannine's website in the description and the show notes. And she does have programs, so I'm going to talk about them in the show notes, because we didn't even talk about all your delicious training and all your beautiful offerings, because it was just dropping wisdom like it's hot.
That's just fine. You come on my website.
Thank you so much for today.
You're welcome. I love hanging out with you. I love chatting. The best part of this journey is landing where we have. Thank you, Jody Ann.
How's your day been?
It's actually been lovely. It's just I'm in a good patch right now. I'm in a really good patch. So I'll take it, because we know there's ups and downs. So I'm just enjoying my day. Very similar to Hawaii in certain ways, with that type of, it either takes you in or spits you out, one of the two, but either way you're going to come out different as your hearers.
I have got to get down there one of these days.
Oh, come on over, girl. I will have you here. Are you kidding? My kids will love it. No, I don't have to chat with another one.
Just jump in my little gypsy caravan.
Yeah, exactly, right.
TikTok song. It just popped in there.